We all go a little mad sometimes, and today I'm diving into one of the greatest thrillers of all time, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. This 1960 masterpiece directed by the legendary Hitchcock himself. It's more than just a film. It's a psychological labyrinth that changed the face of cinema forever, with a gripping script and haunting performances from the stellar cast, including Anthony Perkins, Janet Leigh, Vera Miles, and John Gavin. Psycho lures you into a seemingly ordinary world before pulling the rug right out from under you. And for this review, I'm watching it the way Hitchcock intended, fully immersed in its black and white brilliance. So lock the bathroom door, turn off the lights, and let's take a closer look at the film that made everyone think twice about taking a shower. Welcome to Movies on the Brain. Let's get started. Psycho opened in theaters on September 8th, 1960 with a budget of $806,947. There aren't any specifics on how it performed weekly, but during its entire theatrical run, Psycho earned $50 million. Marion Crane, a real estate secretary in Phoenix, steals $40,000 in cash from her employer after hearing her boyfriend, Sam Loomis, complain that his debts are delaying their marriage. She sets off to drive to Sam's house in the town of Fairville, California, switching cars in Bakersfield after an encounter with a suspicious policeman. A heavy rainstorm forces Marion to stop at the Bates Motel just a few miles from Fairville. Norman Bates, the proprietor, whose second Empire-style house overlooks the motel, registers Marion, who uses an alias, and invites her to dinner with him in the motel's office. When Norman returns to his house to retrieve the food, Marion overhears him arguing with his mother about his desire to dine with Marion. After he returns, he discusses his hobby as a taxidermist, his mother's illness, and how people have a private trap they want to escape. When Marion suggests that Norman should have his mother institutionalized, he becomes greatly offended and insists that she's harmless. Marion decides to drive back to Phoenix in the morning to return the stolen money. As she showers, a shadowy figure enters the bathroom and stabs her to death. Shortly after, Norman comes to check on Marion, only to discover her dead body. Horrified, he hurriedly cleans up the murder scene. He then places Marion's body, her belongings, and unbeknownst to him, the hidden cash in her car, before sinking the vehicle in a swamp. Marion's sister Lila arrives in Fairville a week later, tells Sam about the theft, and demands information about Marion's whereabouts. He denies knowing anything about Marion's disappearance. A private investigator named Arbogast approaches them, stating that he had been hired to retrieve the money. He stops at the Bates Motel and questions Norman, whose nervous conduct, stuttering, and inconsistent answers arouse his suspicion. He examines the guest register and discovers from her handwriting that Marion spent the night in the motel. When Arbogast infers from Norman that Marion had spoken to his mother, he asks to speak with her, but Norman refuses to allow it. After Arbogast enters the Bates house to search for Norman's mother, a shadowy figure assaults him at the top of the stairs and stabs him to death. When Sam and Lila do not hear back from Arbogast, Sam goes to the motel to look for him. He spots a silhouette in the house who he assumes is Norman's mother. Lila and Sam alert the local sheriff, Al Chambers, who tells them Norman's mother died in a murder-suicide by strychnine poisoning a decade earlier. Chambers suggests that Arbogast lied to Sam and Lila so he could pursue Marion and the money. Convinced that something unusual happened to Arbogast, Lila and Sam drive to the motel. Sam distracts Norman in the office while Lila sneaks into the Bates house. Suspicious, Norman knocks Sam unconscious. As he heads to the house, Lila hides in the fruit cellar where she discovers the mummified body of Norman's mother. Lila screams in horror, and Norman, wearing women's clothes and a wig, enters the cellar and attempts to stab her. Sam appears and subdues him. At the police station, the psychiatrist explains that Norman killed his mother and her lover 10 years prior out of jealousy. Unable to bear the guilt, he mummified his mother's corpse and treated it as if she were still alive. He recreated his mother as an alternate personality, as jealous and possessive towards Norman as he felt about his mother. Whenever Norman is attracted to a woman, Mother takes over. Under the Mother persona, Norman killed two women before he killed Marion and Arbogast. The psychiatrist concludes that Mother has now submerged Norman's personality. Norman sits in a jail cell and hears his mother's voice stating that the murders were his doing. Meanwhile, Marion's car, which contains her remains and the stolen money, is retrieved from the swamp. Now let's look at the cast and some of their other roles that they've had. Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates. Before his passing in September of 1992, other roles for Anthony Perkins include Chaplain Tapman in Catch-22, Arthur Johnson in A Demon in My View, and Dennis Pitt in Pretty Poison. Vera Miles as Lila Crane. Other roles for Vera Miles include Haley Stoddard in The Man Who Shot Liberty Vance, Joan Caper in Into the Night, and Laura Ring in It Takes All Kinds. John Gavin as Sam Loomis. Before his passing in February of 2018, other roles for John Gavin include Trevor Graydon in Thoroughly Modern Millie, Commander Don Talbot in the TV show Convoy, and Paul Saxon in Backstreet. Martin Balsam as private investigator Milton Arbogast. Before his passing in February of 1996, other roles for Martin Balsam include Arnold in A Thousand Crowns, the Judge in Cape Fear, and Major Briggs in Brotherhood and Blood. John McIntyre as Deputy Sheriff Al Chambers. I was unable to find any other roles for John McIntyre, so I'm assuming this was his only role. Simon Oakland as Dr. Richmond. Before his passing in August of 1983, other roles for Simon Oakland include Sam Bennett in Bullet, Thomas More in the TV show Black Sheep Squadron, and Matthew Gunn in The Hunting Party. Frank Albertson as Tom Cassidy. Before his passing in February of 1964, other roles for Frank Albertson include Bill Blakely in Johnny Cool, Sam the Mayor in Bye Bye Birdie, and Lieutenant Crane in The Enemy Below. Pat Hitchcock as Caroline. Before her passing in August of 2021, other roles for Pat Hitchcock include Mrs. Harris in Skateboard, Barbara Morton in Strangers on a Train, and she also made several appearances as various characters on the TV show Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Vaughn Taylor as George Lowry. Before his passing in April of 1983, other roles for Vaughn Taylor include Andy McAllister in The Gumball Rally, Toad Taplinger in Fever Heat, and Mr. Halson in The Power. Lorraine Tuttle as Mrs. Chambers. Before her passing in May of 1986, other roles for Lorraine Tuttle include Mrs. Phelps in Evil Town, Hannah Yarby in the TV show Julia, and Ms. Natalie Miller in The Ghost and Mr. Chicken. John Anderson as California Charlie. Before his passing in August of 1992, other roles for John Anderson included Agent Reagan in The Satan Bug, Harry Jackson in the 1985 TV show MacGyver, and Abraham Lincoln in the Lincoln Conspiracy. Mort Mills as the Highway Patrol officer. Before his passing in June of 1993, other roles for Mort Mills include Sergeant O'Hearn and Soldier Blue, Will Parker in Return of the Gunfighter, and the sheriff in the TV show The Big Valley. Janet Leigh as Marion Crane. Before her passing in October of 2004, other roles for Janet Leigh include Kathy Williams in The Fog, Norma in Halloween H2O 20 years later, and Mary Ann in The Grand Slam. The opening scene with Marion Crane and Sam Loomis is an interesting one because they are lovers, yet they have to see each other secretly. I really like the chemistry between Janet Leigh and John Gavin as well. Tom Cassidy flaunting his money and saying he was buying a house for his daughter and that he's not buying happiness is such a strange line, but the way Frank Albertson delivers it is really well done. Marion taking off with the $40,000 is such a wild scene, especially with the score behind the entire scene as she's packing her things. I get weird vibes from the cop that follows Marion and then parks across the street while she's at the car lot. When she didn't really do anything wrong to my knowledge, she just pulled off to the side of the road because she was tired. Marion trading her car to get another one. I understand why the salesman was apprehensive about it, especially with her being in such a hurry. But I like that we get her driving with the salesman's conversation with the cop, and her boss with her boss's sister in the background. Clever editing, and I really like the story of it. Tom Cassidy saying he'd skin Marion to replace any of the money that was missing as she's driving in the rain and struggling is really well done. Anthony Perkins has such charisma as Norman Bates, and him and Janet Leigh have some really good chemistry as well. Norman having a hobby in taxidermy is an interesting thing, especially the way he told Marion that he likes to stuff things and then pause as though he lost his train of thought. There being no score during the scene where Marion is eating and having a conversation with Norman is a bit unsettling, but it sets the tone for the rest of the movie. The turn in Norman's character when Marion suggests putting his mother someplace so he can live his life is very unsettling, and the score behind it doesn't help matters. Even in black and white, the lighting on Norman's face after Marion leaves to her room really gives you bad vibes about him, even more so after he peeps on Marion changing. I'd always seen the clip of Marion's death, but never actually seen the scene until watching it for this review, and it definitely lives up to the hype of just seeing the clip. Norman burying Marion in her car in what looks like cement is such a wild scene. It turns out that it's not cement, it's a swamp, but it's so well shot, and I love that when the car stops sinking, the immediate shot we get of Norman's face of nervousness, followed by a smile when it goes back to sinking. I really enjoyed those two shots. I like that we finally go back to Sam and get introduced to Marion's sister Lila, and she's looking for Marion. Then we get a montage of the private investigator going to all the hotels and motels trying to find any trace of Marion. The private investigator grilling Norman and Norman getting nervous is such a good scene and well written too. As I said already a few times, Martin Balsam and Anthony Perkins have really good chemistry during that scene. The private investigator barging into Norman's home is such a sleazy thing to do, even if he is trying to find out what happened to Marion, and he deserved getting killed for going in uninvited. That's just my personal opinion. Until Lila and Sam got the sheriff involved, I would assumed that Norman's mother was dead, and the sheriff confirmed those feelings after a conversation with Norman, or at least we're led to believe it was all a conversation with him. The overhead shot of Norman carrying his mother out of her room was so great to see. It's fantastic watching all these angles they used in movies from the 50s and 60s. I love the shot of Lila walking up to Norman's house with the accompanying score. It gets you nervous and anxious for her. Such a brilliant way to reveal that Norman is his mother by Lila finding who she assumed was his mother, screaming, then Norman coming down stairs in a wig, only to be disarmed by Sam was absolutely brilliant. I love the exposition of Norman by word of the psychiatrist. Fantastic way to catch us up to speed on why Norman is the way he is. Overall, a brilliant movie that isn't your typical horror slash thriller, but is just as good, if not better, than most. Now let's look at some fun facts and trivia about it. Director Sir Alfred Hitchcock was so pleased with the score written by Bernard Herrmann that he doubled the composer's salary to $34,501. Hitchcock later said 33% of the effect of Psycho was due to the music. Ironically, he was originally adamant that there should be no music in the shower scene, but he was persuaded by his wife to give it a try. The screeching violins and dire strings, which would inspire the music for Jaws, ended up selling the scene and driving theatrical audiences beyond anything they had experienced. When the cast and crew began work on the first day, they had to raise their right hands and swear an oath not to divulge one word of the story. Alfred Hitchcock also withheld the ending part of the script from his cast until he needed to shoot it. Director Alfred Hitchcock bought the rights to the novel anonymously from Robert Bloch for only $9,000. He then bought up as many copies of the novel as he could in order to keep the ending a secret. Paramount Pictures gave Sir Alfred Hitchcock a very small budget with which to work because of their distaste with the source material. They also deferred most of the box office take to Hitchcock, thinking the movie would fail. When it became a sleeper hit, Hitchcock made a fortune. Walt Disney refused to allow Sir Alfred Hitchcock to film at Disneyland in the early 1960s because Hitchcock made that disgusting film, Psycho. Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh said they did not mind being stereotyped forever because of their participation in this movie. They said in interviews they would rather be stereotyped and be remembered forever in this classic movie than not be remembered at all. The score, composed by Bernard Herrmann, is played entirely by stringed instruments. Janet Leigh received threatening letters after this movie's release, detailing what they would do to Marion Crane. One was so grotesque she passed it on to the FBI. The culprits were discovered, and the FBI said she would notify them again if she ever received any more letters. Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh were allowed to improvise their roles. For example, Norman's habit of munching on candy corn. First billed, Anthony Perkins does not appear until 27 minutes into the film. Second billed, Vera Miles did not appear until 57 minutes into the film. The shower scene was shot from December 17th through December 23rd, 1959. It features 50 different camera angles and includes 77 cuts. And there you have it, Psycho, a film that not only defied expectations but forever shifted the landscape of horror and suspense. From Hitchcock's mastery behind the film to unforgettable performances by Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh, every frame of this film is dripping with tension and intrigue. Hitchcock taught us that fear isn't just what you see, but in what you don't see, and sometimes in what's hidden within ourselves. It's no wonder Psycho remains an iconic touchstone in cinematic history. So, what did you think? Did Psycho still make your heart race after all these years? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this dive into Hitchcock classics, stick around. There's more coming on movies on the brain. But remember, next time you hear a knock, maybe don't answer. Until next time, this is Jason signing off.